70 kilometers, 3 days. No training, amazing hikes. My friends and I went through Vancouver to Mount Rainier and the Enchantments. They were some of the best hikes I've ever been on. Follow along as I take you from each spot, giving you breathtaking views, important information for your trip, awesome moments, and a few fun times between friends. Keep in mind, all of us had absolutely no training prior to this trip, so at the end we were barely walking. So, here's how to spend 7 days in Washington State, and a little time in Vancouver. I landed in Vancouver for day 1, where we ended up just doing some prep by going to Costco and some other stores for our upcoming trip. Nothing too crazy, just some good food, relaxation, and some prep. On day 2, we wanted to warm up the legs by going on a hike to Elfin Lakes. Located 1.5 hours from Vancouver, this hike features some amazing views within Garibaldi Park and ends off with an even better view of the mountainscape near the end. Obviously, it also features the Elfin Lakes itself, one of which you can swim in. The hike is about 20 kilometers in length and took us about 6.5 hours to complete, including time for pictures, snack breaks, lunch, and a nice swim in icy water. You are required to reserve a permit for this hike, whether you plan to camp near Elfin Lakes or day hike it. The permit's open for booking at 7 a.m. PST 2 days before your planned date, so make sure you get them as soon as you can. For Elfin Lakes, reserve your pass for the Diamond Head parking lot, as this is where you start your hike and park your car. We had no issue reserving a permit for a day hike in mid-August, although it was a Thursday. I haven't looked into camping overnight here, so I can't speak on how permits are, but this is definitely something I hope to do in the future. Overall, the hike was fairly easy, with a gradual elevation gain. You start off hiking through the forest for the first couple of kilometers, which is a gradual incline. Once you get past all the forest, you're greeted with an amazing view of the mountains, which lasts for the rest of the trail until the lakes. There are 3 bathrooms located on the trail, one at the starting lot, another about 4 kilometers at the end of the forest area, and one more at Elfin Lakes. Another thing to keep in mind for this hike and other hikes is bear safety. Other hikers on the trail mentioned seeing a mama bear and her cub, so we were glad we brought our bear spray. In addition, we made sure to make ourselves known along the trail, whether it be by clapping, tapping hiking sticks, or our favorite, just singing. Elfin Lakes was definitely an easy hike as the elevation was really gradual, had amazing views for most of the trail, and offered a refreshing dip into the water. I would definitely recommend this hike. After meeting up with a few more friends, we made our way down to Seattle for day 3. We stopped along the way for some random shopping and then explored the nearby area around our hotel. Just a walk away was Pike Place, which is famous for its shops and markets. On the way there, we checked out the spheres and the pier as well. Apparently, Pike Place Market can have tons of shops set up, as well as the very first Starbucks, but it just so happened that that day an event was going on, so we couldn't see any of those things. Instead, we took our time to check out the sites near the water, some neat stores, and whatever else the area offered. We ended the night at Topgolf with some drinks and tried to make an early night for an early wake-up time. But with us, it doesn't usually go as planned. On day 4, we woke up extra early to get into Mount Rainier. The Rainier area is huge and there was so much to explore. However, with limited time, we opted to just do the Three Burrows hike located on the north end at sunrise. The entrance system into Mount Rainier has changed over the past couple of years now by introducing a timed entry system where you need to have a reservation to enter the park between the hours of 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Getting a timed entry reservation during these periods can be difficult, as often they're snatched up really quickly on the day of release, or at least a couple days after. However, don't worry, as you can still enter the park without a reservation if you enter before 7 a.m. or after 3 p.m. Since our trip was fairly last minute and we had a long hike ahead, we entered the park before 7 a.m. After entering the park at White River entrance, we took the 2-lane road all the way up towards Sunrise parking lot with views of the mountains along the way. At Sunrise, there are several facilities such as a restaurant, a water station, and restrooms, but since we're there early, we didn't get to use some of them. After some prep, we gathered ourselves for a long 15 to 20 kilometer hike doing the Three Burrows Mountain Loop. But some errors were made and we did go off trail, more on this later. The trail starts off with some incline, but already the views of the plants and mountains are visible and amazing. This starting area of the trail follows other trails in the area, so you'll likely see more people for now. As you continue along and gain elevation, the views of Mount Rainier are non-stop, and it definitely doesn't get old. The hike gets its name from the 3 burrows you travel up and through. Most hikers just go through the first 2 burrows, but I would say the third is worth the extra suffering, but is seriously tough. If you survive, you get views of the beautiful glacier and the surrounding area, plus usually there aren't as many people here. After hitting the 3rd burrow with the out and back trail, we made our mistake. At this junction here, after the 2nd burrow, and before the 3rd, we thought continuing towards Glacier Basin would complete the loop back to Sunrise, when really we were supposed to backtrack over the 2nd burrow and the 1st, taking a separate trail to complete the loop. Instead, we went down towards Glacier Basin and unleashed hell on ourselves. Granted, the views were still incredible as we saw the other side of the mountains decorated with wildflowers on the trail, but the harsh descent down was really strenuous. We marched forward towards White River Campground, where we realized we still had another 3 kilometers of distance and massive elevation. So one of us decided to hitchhike back to our car, and we came back to pick the rest of us up. Overall, even though we went on the wrong trail, I actually enjoyed the 3 Burrows hike and thought it was amazing. I would highly recommend this trail, and honestly, it wasn't that hard if you stayed on the trail. Alright, the 3rd burrow was tough, and I can't speak for the part of the trail I missed, but I would still recommend it. After getting picked up, we ended the day in a nice hotel to rest our bodies for the rest of the trip. On day 5, we had originally planned to go on the south end of the park and do the Skyline Loop, but after assessing everyone, I think we needed a break. After sleeping in and getting a good night's rest, we had a nice breakfast and made our way over to Levenworth. Just a 10-minute drive away from Levenworth is our next hike, the Enchantments. The town itself is really awesome as it's a Bavarian-styled village with lots of cool things to do and see. What's special about this place is the really cool architecture and general festive vibe. Pretty much all the buildings had similar architecture, even the grocery store and the McDonald's. There are many ski areas nearby, so in the winter it becomes quite popular, and I imagine really fun. We decided to stay at the Icicle Village Resort, which stayed true to the Bavarian style. Since we came in with plenty of time to explore, we made use of the facilities playing some pickleball and basketball. There were some other things to do such as mini golf, a spa, pool and hot tub, but we had too much fun being goofs. Additionally, across the street, there is also a little mountain coaster that looked really fun. You do need reservations for these, so make sure you book ahead if you want to go on this. For dinner, we were recommended Visconti's, a really cozy Italian restaurant, and I ended up getting the lemon crab linguine, which was really tasty. I definitely recommend coming in. Nearby, there is a side street with lots of shops, but by the time we got there, it was dark and everything was closed. We got back to our room for an early night, and to prep for our biggest challenge tomorrow. Day 6 was something I really look forward to the most, the Enchantments. This is about a 32.5 point-to-point trail located 10 minutes out of Leavenworth, with otherworldly views of alpine lakes and mountains. Although hard, this was probably one of my favorite hikes ever, and it was really amazing all the way through. I will say this hike is not for the faint of heart, as it was definitely the hardest hike I've ever done. The elevation gain is tough, with one section called Asgard Pass, which gains about 2,000 feet of elevation over 1 mile. After reaching the peak, gaining about 5,500 feet elevation, you're only at about 1/3 of the distance. But the rest is flat and mostly downhill, which might be nice at first, but with rocky terrain, it really takes a toll on the body. Don't let this scare you though, as the views on this hike were breathtaking. Your body might cry, but you'll be blown away by the views the whole time. The trail can either start at Snow Lakes or Stewart Lakes, but it's generally started at Stewart Lakes trailhead, as you reduce the amount of elevation gain needed, and is generally an easier trail as the first 1/3 of the hike is all elevation gain, and after that it's all downhill. To accommodate this point-to-point hike, most people will park their car at Snow Lakes, which is the end of the hike, and then book a shuttle to Stewart Lakes and begin their hike that way. I used Leavenworth shuttle and taxi, and they were pretty good. I'll post the link below. To do this hike, you do need a permit, but if you're doing a day hike through, then you just fill out the paperwork at the start of the trail and do not require any booking ahead of time. If you were wanting to do an overnight trip here, you would need to go through the online lottery system for a permit, which is pretty difficult to score. And I never really tried it, but if you get the chance to do this, it would definitely be amazing. We woke up at around 4 a.m. to make some food and get ourselves together as we needed to be at the Snow Lakes trailhead for our shuttle at 5 a.m. After about a 20-minute shuttle, we got to the trailhead and started our long hike in the dark forest. Since you start your hike in the dark, it's pretty key to bring a headlamp for this portion. This first 6-kilometer forest portion doesn't offer too much and was a little tiring with plenty of elevation gain, but overall nothing crazy. Where the fun begins is when you hit Colchuck Lake, which is famous for its beautiful color. The initial side of the lake as you exit the forest was amazing, with views of the lake, Dragon's Tail Peak, and Asgard's Pass, but this early area can get a little crowded. For some pictures, I would actually recommend continuing forward as there are other unique viewpoints before you get to Asgard's Pass. Regardless, we took a little meal break here to refuel and rest while enjoying the amazing water. After a break and mental preparation, we marched forward to tackle Asgard's Pass. There is plenty of flowing water along the climb, so I wouldn't worry about filling water at the lake too much. Overall, we took it slow and took plenty of breaks to pace ourselves. The climb is daunting and took us about 2 hours to get up, so make sure you set yourselves mini checkpoints and take breaks so you don't burn yourself out mentally and physically. But as you climb up, the views of Colchuck Lake get even better. The path isn't quite clear on the climb, so try to follow the cairns made by hikers. A general guideline is to hug the left and curve around this little tree area. Once we finally finished, we celebrated, took some pictures, and moved on towards my favorite section. We took out lunch here and just took in all the views of the alpine lakes, streams, and beautiful scenery. We were pretty relieved to be done any elevation gain, but after another 10 kilometers of downhill, it really starts to suck, but like I said, the views are still unbeatable. One of my favorite viewpoints of the hike was this little cliff overlooking one of the lakes below. The view was so nice, we shared it with a mountain goat and their young. Moving forward, we passed tons of beautiful lakes and different views. After each descent down a pass, you honestly think you're at the lowest point of the hike, but you then pass another turn and you realize you're still pretty high up. The trail is listed at about 28 to 35 kilometers depending on your source, so we weren't really sure how far along we were. Our watches clocked the total hike at about 32.5 kilometers at about 15 hours, and at 12.5 hours of walking time. At one point, we thought we had maybe 2 kilometers left, so we all gained a burst of energy and ran through the forest, giggling like schoolchildren, thinking we would see the parking lot at any moment. In reality, we actually had maybe 6 kilometers left, and we got burnt out and gained some injuries. Powering through the last bit, we still had some nice views of the valleys and forests, and at this time in August, the bugs weren't too bad at all. You'll know you're really close to the end once you see these switchbacks. Overall, a great hike, 10 out of 10, definitely a must-do. I'd probably come again, although I'd probably use hiking poles next time, and try to start a little earlier, just so I have more time to relax at the viewpoints. After a long day, lots of sore legs, we headed back to the resort and relaxed after a big hike. On this last day 7, we woke up to some major soreness and spent a little time recovering in the hot tub. We then set out for our drive back to Vancouver, which was about 4 hours. Nothing too significant here as we had flights home that night, so we hurried back, had some dinner, walked around the area, and went to the airport for a flight home. In the beginning of planning, we considered going to Olympic and North Cascades National Park, but we felt we didn't have enough time for Olympic, and it just so happened that wildfires had shut down a lot of the North Cascades. So to really complete a Washington State road trip, these would be next up on the list. This trip also had some special value, as it was my bachelor party. I had originally thought the trip was going to be myself and one friend, but 3 more of my best mates surprised me for the trip, and honestly, the whole thing was perfect, and I had a blast. To my good friends who stuck it out, I love you all and I'm happy I suffered with you, and I wouldn't have done it with anyone else. If you have been following my channel, you will know I've actually proposed to my now wife in Iceland of 2022. At the time of recording this video, we've already been married doing all the paperwork, and we just got back from a road trip in Oregon where we had a beautiful ceremony and another road trip. I'll be sure to share that amazing trip here as we start in Portland and make memories down the coastline and then loop back up through Central Oregon. So if you're planning to go to Oregon or just want to see our beautiful adventure elopement, make sure you're subscribed and keep a lookout for that upcoming video. As always, if you enjoyed my video or style of video with helpful tips and itineraries, please help out by liking and checking out my other videos as well. If you've been to any of these places in the video, definitely let me know about your experiences, as I would love to hear about your adventures. Safe travels and see you on the next trip.